Why am I looking like that? Mhm. Wow. Okay, I'm going to jump right in because I'm really excited about this tonight. I don't know if you would call it a class, a sermon, or what, but the title of this is "Thank God for Judas." And I know, like that sounds like crazy. The one thing about me is I am not a traditional Christian or a trained Christian. In other words, like I never had a church home. I went to church, here and there, but I didn't necessarily grow up in the church. I have been baptized. I was baptized when I was 11 years old. But so I'm learning the Bible and the scripture as I go along. So for me, I'm not sure what traditional Christians believe or what they think about the Bible. I just know what I know or what I'm finding out or what I'm learning, and I'm just sharing as I go along. And I appreciate everybody that's on this journey with me, have been on this journey with me. But that's where I'm at. So, I didn't know if this would offend people or not for what their beliefs are, but I can't base my content around what other people might like and what they might not like. I have to be me. So, all right, thank God for Judas came from the reading of this book called Discover the Power Within You by Eric Butterworth. Now, I was briefly a part of a book club that is held by the Living Truth Center, which is in East Cleveland. You can check them out online, follow the Facebook page. They are a New Thought Christian church. So they teach metaphysics uh, within Christianity, with Jesus being a way shower. Absolutely love uh, that center. They are some amazing people, very kind people. So, interested in that, check them out. Come to church or service on Sundays at 11 a.m. East Cleveland and Sun Belmont, Living Truth Center. All right. So anyway, I was a part of their book club, and we read this book. One of the chapters, which I believe is chapter 13, is called In Defense of Judas. Let me get the chapter number right. 15, I'm sorry. Chapter 15, In Defense of Judas. And that particularly stood out to me for many reasons, but one reason because I felt a deep, deep sense of betrayal by people who I loved and cared about and supported and looked out for. And it is or was some of the biggest incident of betrayal I feel like I had ever faced in my life. And so I think that when you go through something that is very hurtful and painful to you, some people respond differently to hurt and pain. But there are those of us who respond to hurt and pain by digging deeper to see, what's behind it, or what your role was in it, or could anything be different, but it just takes you on this journey of trying to maybe understand humanity or understand why people make the decisions that they make or why people do the things they do and why you do the things that you do. And, how did you and this person or these people even come into contact with one another? So that, really hit home for me. And as I'm learning about Jesus and Jesus' relationships with others, this just stood out to me. And I wanted to title it Thank God for Judas because I had a revelation this morning where I thought, like, this is the betrayal is a part of the divine plan, in a sense that, we are all here for a purpose and a reason, and we made a contract with our spirit, our higher selves made a contract before we landed on this earth. One thing I always tell people, a lot of people don't agree with, is that I say you choose your parents, and so people, if they didn't have a good childhood, they're like, well, why would I choose my parents? But it's because there was something within that person or that soul that you needed that was going to help you become your higher self. And we have to get back to our higher self, or we have to remember who we are. Remembering who we are is getting back to our higher selves. And so the people that come into our lives, who we are born onto, or who we meet along the way, these are people that we attract to us, or that we have made a soul contract with. And there is something that they need from us and we need from them. And a lot of times it's the catalyst for your spiritual growth, for your conscious growth. So, in this sense, back to Judas, Judas was a catalyst to the resurrection. Jesus wanted, and he states this, a part of this was him wanting and desiring to show man their divinity, that he would be resurrected. It was the demonstration, the great demonstration. And so Judas played a role. He played his role. He played the role that Jesus wanted him to play and needed him to play in order for Jesus to demonstrate the great demonstration, which was overcoming death and resurrecting or rising again. He rose up. And so he would not have been able to demonstrate the great rising or the great resurrection had it not been for Judas's role and him carrying out his role. And Jesus knew this. This was a part of the divine plan. It was a part of the prophecy. And that's why Jesus didn't resist Judas. When he saw Judas, he told him, this is Matthew 26:50. He says, "Friend, do what you came to do." Because Jesus understood and knew that he came to do that. That's what Judas came to do. That's what his role. He like, "Friend, go ahead, do what you got to do. Betray me. This is your time to shine. This is your moment. It's your Oscar moment. It's your time to shine. Do what it is that you came to do, because this is a part of the story. It's a part of the demonstration. It's part of the prophecy. It is part of how I show the great demonstration, how I show the divinity of man, how I show that we can overcome the things that come, that not that we necessarily attract to us, but that are just a part of the plan. So Jesus calling him a friend. Jesus didn't say, hey, he didn't call him a coward. He didn't call him a sucker. He ain't call him anything other than a friend. He didn't call him a betrayer. He didn't call him a traitor. He said, friend, do what you came to do. This is what you're supposed to do. Do it. And so that alone tells us that the betrayal had a divine purpose. And it's very interesting that we were reading this book during Lenten season, right? Because we are coming up on Good Friday and Easter. And so this is just, I think, appropriate and proper at this moment to really talk about how betrayal has a divine purpose. And so Florence Scovel Shinn, who I love, Florence Scovel Shinn, she is the first person I read who made a connection between divine law and biblical scriptures. That was the first time I had ever seen anybody do that before. And from there, I was like all in. I was like, okay, now I'm interested in the Bible and what the Bible is talking about, because I've always been interested in divine law and consciousness. So how are those two things connected? And so Florence Scovel Shinn, she says in one of her books, there is no enemy in divine mind. And as many times as I would affirm that to myself, I still hadn't grasped that reality until this morning, today, when I had my epiphany, because I would say that, but I'm like, wow, we always talking about enemies. We talking about enemies, and we talking about haters, and we talking about just all these people who don't like us. And, we do this all the time as humans. So what does that mean? And then from a metaphysical perspective, I at least understood that any enemies that you have are enemies of you, like in a sense that fear is an enemy, doubt is an enemy, talking negative is an enemy. Those things are regret, shame, guilt. Those things are enemies, right? So while we are looking at other people like, oh, they're the enemy, actually we are projecting them We're projecting our fears onto others. So that's a whole nother class, a whole nother topic. Let me stick to that there are no enemies in divine mind. And the reason why that is goes back to that even betrayal has a divine purpose. And so these are not enemies. These are characters. They're playing a role. They're playing their role really good. Like they're really good at what they're doing. But they all serve a purpose. We all serve a purpose, including you, including me. We all serve a divine purpose. There is a plan, a divine plan, and we all have a role in that. And you know how much strength a person has to have to, on a soul level, agree to betray Jesus or agree to betray someone, just so that it's a part of the larger plan, the divine plan. That's a different type of strength. And that's a different type of love. That's a different type of deep hit and compassion. And I know, trust me, I know that what I'm saying to the natural ear probably sounds crazy. You know what I mean? Because why would we be thanking Judas? Why would we be thanking God for Judas? Why would we be thanking God for the people that come into our lives and try to tear us apart and tear us down and use us and abuse us and do all of these untoward things to us? Like, why would we want to say that that person or those people are not enemies and they're traitors and they're cowards and they're all of these bad things, right? But to the spirit man, to the higher man, the higher self sees the larger plan, the larger thing. And it's like, okay, well, what is the plan? What is to be done? Why do we need this plan, right? And what is the plan and why do we need this plan? Well, the plan technically is heaven on earth, right? That is a rise in consciousness. That's all the way up to Christ consciousness. The plan is to help humanity awaken and remember who they are. And Jesus, his role and what he was doing was awakening man and demonstrating the divinity in man. That was a part of his prophecy to advance humans, advance us, and help us to remember who we are at our core and our source. The Father and I are one. And Jesus participated in that as the chosen one who was crucified and then resurrected. So, what if that is true? What I said about what if every person in your life played the exact role they were assigned to play in your elevation? That's really, really hard for us to accept. It's hard for us to accept. And I had to ask myself this question, right? Because I feel right now that my teaching is evolving because prior me would say, we attract these experiences into our lives, and everything that comes into your life, you brought it into your life because you wanted it in your life, um, for whatever reason. But now I have evolved to think that you didn't necessarily attract these things into your life, but you did agree to them. So your higher self and the higher self of another, divinity to divinity. You know how we say woman to woman, man to man? Well, divinity to divinity, we agree for the larger plan, which is to awaken humanity and help humans remember who they are on a soul and divine level. In the same way that babies know who they are. Children know who they are. They are operating in the highest frequency. It's as we get older, we begin to forget who we are, and we forget until we only remember a little bit of ourselves. Now we're vast and we're whole, but we only remember about this much of ourselves. And so the plan is to awaken humanity, awaken the divinity in humanity. And so we all have a role to play in that. These circumstances and situations all play a role in that because the very first divine law is the law of oneness. And that means that everything is interconnected. There is no separation. Separation is an illusion. Whoever you are, I am at the soul level, divinity to divinity. And so when we look in our communities, when we see violence happen and all of these things that we complain about and we see on the news, those things happen so that they can awaken us and help us remember who our divinity is. And it will keep happening until we awaken to our true divinity and remember who we are. And so those things are not, they're happening for a reason. It's a part of the plan. And so it's supposed to be a catalyst. This is the crucifixion. If we are talking about modern day, our streets, our communities, our people, we being crucified, right? Because we lack knowledge. We'll perish for a lack of knowledge. Our people shall perish for a lack of knowledge, right? And that lack of knowledge is the lack of knowledge in self, the lack of knowledge in your own divinity. So we don't necessarily attract these experiences, but we agree to them. Our souls agree to them. Divinity to divinity, our souls agree to them. Some souls agree to be your mirror. Those relationships, particularly romantic relationships, and particularly family relationships, are relationships that are designed to be your mirror. They are designed to reflect back to you who you are and what it is that you need to work on. I was talking to someone today, and I was telling them that there was a point in time in my life that two family members in particular, everything that they used to do and say just annoyed me, just irritated me. Like they could breathe, and I was annoyed. Like, oh my, like why is you breathing? You breathing too loud. Like oh my God, right? And but it was a mirror. Why am I so easily irritated and agitated? What's wrong with me that I'm walking on eggshells, or not walking on eggshells, but I'm just sitting up here like, oh, I'm just so annoyed and irritated. That don't got nothing to do with them. That has something to do with me. I have to change something about myself. I have to look at myself in the mirror and say, why are you so easily irritated? I had to get to a place of acceptance, of accepting people for who they are. Why is your presence a bother to me? Why are you doing you, being who you are, of any irritant to me? It's not that person, it's me. Right? So some souls agree to come here to be your mirror, your pressurizer, and your trigger. A couple classes ago, I talked about Abraham Lincoln and that horsefly. If it wasn't for that horsefly on that horse wouldn't move an inch. And we are the same way. If it's not for that mirror, if it's not for that pressure, if it's not for that trigger, we wouldn't move an inch. We wouldn't move an inch. And so that is the point, part of the point that all of these things are part of the plan. And this is why our souls will agree to be certain characters or roles in the higher plan. So thank God for Judas. If it wasn't for Judas, Jesus would not have shown man its divinity. Jesus had to go through the crucifixion, resurrection in order to be the demonstration. He had to be the demonstration. That was what that's what he came here for, right? And he fulfilled it. So why are we mad at Judas? We all have a Judas, and some of us are Judas to others in their lives. So who are we to judge? Who are we to judge Judas? But even though in our minds we have this, we caught up with Judas and what we think about him, that doesn't make Judas, it don't make Judas evil. It doesn't make him evil because he fulfilled his role. He did what he was supposed to do. So, I'm looking at my notes. But this is around the crucifixion and resurrection. Betrayal doesn't mean that you are broken. It just means that you are about to resurrect. Okay. So if you ever experience what you deem to be betrayal as the natural man, because only the natural man will recognize such a circumstance or situation as betrayal. And I have been that natural man, right? Or woman. I've been that natural woman where I have looked at the things that I have experienced as betrayal. And I have been vocal about it too, right? Like, I'm like, they betrayed me, they betrayed me, you know? And it's so amazing how you pray, and praise, and you can receive some clarity around that. And it completely changed my perspective around everything because this is the part in my life where I am being resurrected, like I am being rebirthed. But this is the story for everybody. I'm not unique in this. I'm just sharing my story or my experience. We all have some sense of betrayal. And so we have to make a decision about if we are going to look at it from this perspective of they did this to me and I've been betrayed, or is this the catalyst for me to rebirth myself, to give birth to myself again, right? How do I alchemize that said betrayal, right? You are divine, and that's what Jesus died for on the cross to show that, or was crucified to show that you are divine, that you are divine, right? So the renewing of the mind, Romans 12:2, renewing of the mind. So yeah, people say you called this in. What time is it? 23. I only want to be on here for 30 minutes. So let me finish up on my notes. We talked about that. People say you called this in, maybe not. Maybe your soul agreed to walk through the fire, not to suffer, but to ascend. Jesus didn't attract the cross, he accepted it and then he transcended it. Now, grace for Judas. Oh, this is a big one. So Judas ran. He ran because he couldn't handle what he did. And I want to say this with the utmost compassion and respect that even the betrayer, the betrayer is still human, and the betrayer may not understand their role in this. Judas didn't understand his role, and Jesus didn't necessarily explain it to him either, but he did call him a friend, as to say, I'm not mad at you. So even though Jesus understood the plan, it seems that Judas did not. And let me be very clear about this too. And the Discover the Power Within You by Eric Butterworth explicitly talks about how Judas loved Jesus. He loved Jesus. He gave up everything to follow Jesus because he did believe in the divine plan. He did believe, and he was his disciple, and he was considered the businessman of the disciples. And he wasn't, some bum, or just a nobody, or nothing like that. Like Judas was, as it says specifically, I'm using this word that it says in the book, but Judas was zealous for Jesus's success, not jealous, but zealous with a Z. He was very enthusiastic about Jesus being successful in fulfilling his prophecy and fulfilling the resurrection. He wanted Jesus to show the divinity in man. And even though he wanted those things, he still didn't understand his role in Jesus's crucifixion. He didn't understand his role. And so when it came down to it, and when he turned him in, he ran. He ran because he then couldn't handle what he did because he didn't understand his role. And that's why it's important. And that's why I say this with the utmost compassion, because I know that this is hard to do, right? Whoever you feel has betrayed you, first of all, they didn't betray you. They were playing their role, and it looks like betrayal, but it's not truly betrayal because they needed to play their role in order for this to be fulfilled. What needed to be fulfilled? What needed to be fulfilled was your purpose, what you came here for. You have to demonstrate to yourself. And while you're demonstrating it to yourself, you're demonstrating it to others that you can't overcome. Now, everybody has a different purpose. Your purpose is probably not to show the divinity in man. That was Jesus's purpose, right? And he did it. He did that. So you have a different purpose, but whatever that purpose is, whoever you believe to be enemies or your betrayers, they have a significant role in helping you to overcome what is being put forth in you so that you strengthen yourself spiritually, because this is about spiritual strength. You have to gain spiritual strength, just like in the gym when you got to gain muscle, you got to work out and you got to, put more weight on it to see more gains. This is the same thing. You got to put more weight on yourself, your more weight on the situation, the more weight on the circumstance. The severity of the circumstance might increase. You have to increase the weight in order for you to grow your spiritual muscle. And so Judas couldn't handle what he did. And that may have just been a testament to either his spiritual strength hadn't been quite there, or Jesus didn't tell him that he was a part of the plan and this was his role and this is what he needed. He was already destined to do. But sometimes this goes to show that sometimes the people who hurt you, they can't even face you. And again, with the utmost compassion, if you understand this, because when you know better, you do better. With great knowledge and power, I know Spider-Man say power, but with great knowledge comes great responsibility, or he might say knowledge, power, whatever. But the point is, you don't need to condemn those who betray you. Who are you to condemn those who betray you? I'm learning this in real time, y'all. I'm learning this in real time because I have certainly moved to condemn the people who I felt like have betrayed me. But renewing of the mind, I'm always researching, writing, studying, reading, listening, because I desire to be my highest self. That's just my personal desire. And I don't desire to hurt people. I don't want to be nobody's Judas in a story. I don't want to be the villain in nobody's story, you know. But this is why the people who hurt you can't face you. But when you know the higher plan, or the bigger plan, you don't need to condemn them. You can, that's not necessarily excusing their behavior. They did what they did, but they did what they did a part of the plan. So you can forgive it, is where I'm getting to. You can forgive it. You can forgive it. It's okay. In fact, bless that person. Honor that person, because that takes some strength. It's a different type of strength. It's a different type of strength, but it takes a lot of strength and love to betray someone who you love, someone who you love and who loved you for the higher plan, for the great awakening, the awakening of humanity, as you will, the coming together of the consciousness that was lost in the Garden of Eden. And that just came from a sermon I was listening to where the pastor was talking about fall from consciousness in the Garden of Eden. So what I said about that and showing compassion to those that you deem as betrayers, it doesn't mean you owe them anything. It does mean that you can release yourself from needing revenge, proof, or even closure. And the biggest part of this that you can free yourself from is the understanding that you are not a victim. You're not a victim. You're not a victim. You're not a mistake, but you are a prophecy being fulfilled in real time. Right. And again, It doesn't matter if you are the one who's been betrayed or you've been the betrayer. It doesn't matter. You played your role and you played your role so good, so well, so well. So that's why it's important for us to move in purpose, or else you is just moving out here just kind of just on the fly and just everywhere. But it is important for you to move in purpose. Okay, let me end this. Um, I want you to think about, though, moving forward, what in you had to die for your truth to rise? What parts of you had to die? What parts of you had to go because you needed those parts of you to die in order for your truth to rise? And what does your resurrection, or what does resurrection look like for you now? What if this whole time you wasn't being punished, but you was being positioned? Can you find the strength to say, thank you? You didn't destroy me, you delivered me. Or can you rise now without needing an apology? Okay. So that is my thank God for Judas. Thank God for Judas class. I felt really good getting this out. This really helped me in so many ways. This has been on my heart since this chapter came up because I've been mulling over it and I didn't know what I was going to talk about on live today. But this was definitely the right conversation to have. So thank you to those who joined.